All right, hi folks, this is Larry Massolino. I wanted to record a short video here for the Module 1, Chapter 2 homework. In particular, I wanted to show you how to get started using StatCrunch to do some of the graphing, and we're also going to use it to do some different statistical measurements. Now, usually graphing in StatCrunch is pretty straightforward, except when the data is not formatted exactly the way you want it for StatCrunch. Let me show you an example of what I mean. So I'm going to do an example here. This is question 3 from the Chapter 2 homework. It's giving us a data table here of educational level of different employees. And so they have a row for frequency. Frequency just means the count. So 153 employees had no degree, 43 had associates, 31 had PhDs, and so on. And then they're also giving us relative frequency. Relative frequency is just the percentage for each category. So for example, 6.2% of employees had a PhD. To calculate 6.2%, the 6.2% is really just equal to the 31 out of the total number of employees. All right, so what we'd like to do is create some graphs of this data. All right, well, the shortcut is to click this copy icon because you can open up this data set directly in StatCrunch. All right, so let's do that. All right, now let me scroll down a little bit because they're going to ask us here to create a few bar charts and pie charts. Well, when you create a pie chart, for example, what we really want to have are the categories in a column. So instead of having frequency and relative frequency in this column, what we'd like to have is none, AA, BA, MA, PhD in the first column. So this table is really not set up exactly the way we want it to create these graphs in StatCrunch. Well, good news, you can easily change these rows into columns. We call that transpose. Transpose means take a row, but convert it to a column. All right, so here's how I'm going to do it in StatCrunch. I'm going to first I'm going to copy this data with my mouse. So I'm clicking my mouse here, and I'm holding my mouse button down to highlight this data. So you can see this data now is highlighted in blue. So I just selected these two columns. I'm going to come up here to data, arrange. Notice it says transpose. So again, what I did here is data, arrange, transpose. All right, so I'm going to click that. And it says, what columns do you want to transpose? Well, I really want to transpose all the columns. So I'm just going to select all of these with my mouse. And notice here it says in the yellow highlighting, it says select more than one using either shift click or control click. So what I'm going to do is I'm on a Windows PC, so I'm going to use control click. What that means is I'm going to hold the control button down. And while I'm holding the control button down, I'm clicking all of these rows to select, I'm selecting all of these column names. All right, and I'm just going to click compute. And now notice StatCrunch created these 3 new columns here where it transposed the rows into columns, which is what I want. All right, so now let's go ahead and create, the first bar chart. All right, so anytime you want to create a graph in StatCrunch, you just click on graph and select the type of graph you want, pie chart, bar chart, histogram, etc. Right? So we want a bar plot. So I'm going to say bar plot. Now, StatCrunch is going to give you this option of with data or with summary. With data means you had the raw data. So, if I had listed out for all of these employees, let me see here. It looks like there's about, 500 employees roughly. If I had all the 500 employees listed out with their individual degrees, that would be the raw data. But I have summarized data here, right? Because someone added up and figured out there's 31 employees with PhDs. So really, I'm going to go with summary because my table is a summary of the data. It's not the raw data. So I'm going to say with summary. All right, now for this bar chart, StatCrunch needs to know where are the categories. In our case, the categories are really these degree types, like bachelor's, PhD. And the counts is going to be what I want to plot. In this case, it's the actual number or the frequency. So what I'm going to say here is categories are in this column. Let me move this over here so you can see it. Now we call this label. I'm going to change the name of this to make it a little more descriptive. I can just click my mouse in this header. I'm going to type in categories because that's really what these are. I'm going to say degree categories, even make it more descriptive. All right, so I call it degree categories. All right, so let me go back. I'm going to say graph, bar plot with summary. All right, the categories are in this column I just labeled as degree categories. And I want to create a frequency chart. So I'm going to click frequency. All right, that's all. I can make this a little more fancy by labeling the x-axis, the y-axis, part of the title, all those other kinds of things. I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to say compute. And here is my chart. Let me put this side by side. All right, well, let me do a quick comparison here. Remember, I just need to figure out which one of these three charts is the right chart to go with. Let me see, maybe I can move this, let's see if I can move this side by side, make it a little easier to do this comparison here. All right, so I got this side by side. Well, let me pick none, which is this blue graph here in the my MATLAB choices. So I'm noticing here this none is at 150. This none here is at 300, and this none here looks like it's something like, I don't know, 130. Well, I could see my none is at 150. So that must mean this must be the correct choice. Right, so I can compare, any bar here. Let's do BA just as an example. Our BA looks like it's about 250. I'm sorry, it was at 225. Right here it is in the table. So this height is 225 for the category BA. So my answer has to have the BA column at 225. Well, you notice this column, this answer choice has it at 225. All right, so once I generate the chart or the graph in StatCrunch, I can easily compare it to the answer choice. All right, so we did that graph. Let's go back now and let's go back to another graph. Now they want the relative frequency bar chart. So let's go down to that. Now it says make a relative frequency bar chart using percentages on the y-axis. Well, I'm going to go back again to graph, bar plot with summary, same thing. The categories, we called it degree categories, but now I want to plot the relative frequency. So I'm going to use relative frequency. And I'll click compute. And again, I can just pick one or two categories here to do a comparison. How about if we pick none again? So let's see, for our plot here, none is at about a height of 30%. Remember, these are percentages now, right? You can see it right here. None was at a height of about 30%. Well, let me compare my graphs. This one has the bar none at 60%. So that must mean this is wrong. This bar is none at 150%. Well, that makes no sense at all. So that's got to be wrong. And here, this bar is at 30%. So that convinces me this is the correct choice. All right, let's do the other part of this, which is a pie chart. So let me scroll down here. Now they want us to create a pie chart. All right, so I'm going to come here to graph pie chart. Okay, again, this is with summary because we've got summarized data. All right, so it needs to know where are the categories. Well, again, the categories are like the PhD, BA, MA. So we call that degree categories. And what we're plotting here is really the relative frequency in this pie chart. So I'm going to go to relative frequency. I can even plot frequency if I want to, but relative frequency I think is a little more logical here. Click compute, and here is my plot. And I got to be careful because the color scheme might not match. Now you can change the color scheme in StatCrunch, but I'm not going to bother to do that because I'm just going to pick one of these categories to compare, just so I can pick the right answer choice here. So I'm going to pick, let's pick PhD. I can see the slice, right? PhD is about 6%, so it's this small slice. Well, in this case, they're using the same color purple for PhD. Well, this slice is way too big, right? My slice has to look like this big in my answer here, right? This one is too big. This one makes sense. So it's got to be this answer choice here. Okay, so again, I can just pick, one or two categories here to compare because I just want to be able to isolate the correct answer choice out of the three options. Okay, so again, what I needed to do here is change the table to format it the way StatCrunch wants it, which means I needed the categories in their own column. That meant I needed these categories to be in a column, not a row. That's why I had to use the transpose option. And remember, for transpose, what I did is I copied the rows to begin with. So to transpose data, transpose. I copied the rows. Then I went to data, arrange, and transpose. Okay, and that'll transpose rows into columns, which is what we need here. All right, let me do another example. By the way, I wanted to just show you before I leave this. Let me just show you a quick way to do some statistical measurements on a column of data. So let me just make up a column of data here. So I'm just going to come up with salaries, let's say. All right, so here's some salaries at my company. $38,000, $49,000, $55,300. I'm just making up some numbers here to use as an example. A few more salaries here. Because I'm making up salaries, this is going to be my salary, $159,000 and $72,000. Okay, that's enough. So maybe what I want to do is analyze this column because I want to know what is the mean, the median, the standard deviation, right? There's a lot of different statistical measurements. You might want to know quartiles and so on. Well, if you come here to stat, summary stats, that is a quick way to get multiple statistical measurements on any column. So I'm coming here to stat. Let me do it again. Stat, summary stats, columns. Because my data is sitting in a column called salaries. All right, what column do I want to analyze? I want to analyze columns. So I'm just going to click my mouse right here on salaries. It copies that column name over to the right to tell me it's selected. And then here are all different kinds of statistical measurements that we can calculate. Notice here it's called statistics, right? And there are some that are highlighted: mean, variance, standard deviation, Q1, Q3. Those are the quartiles. I can add more. I'm going to add all of them. I'm just selecting these with my mouse. I'm just going to add all of these just to show you that you can select all of these. All right, I'm just going to click compute. And so StatCrunch gives me this table that shows me the average salary is about $73,900. There were 8 data values that we started with. Here's the standard deviation. Here's the median salary. The minimum salary was $32,000. The maximum salary was $159,000. Here's the first quartile. Here's the third quartile, and so on. And if I scroll over, there's all these other measurements as well. So summary stats. So let me just make a note here. Again, you want the data in columns. That's the best way to do this kind of analysis, data in columns. And then you just go to stat, summary stat, columns. Okay. All right, let me go to one more example here. Go back to the homework. And I'm just looking for some other graphing examples. Some problems, you're given the graph. Let's do this one. I just want to show you on some problems, you're given a pie chart like this and then ask questions about the pie chart, right? But I want to go back to a question where you're asked to, so this one, they're going to ask you to generate a stacked bar chart. This is a little tricky because StatCrunch doesn't exactly do this stacked bar chart directly, but we can do a little bit of a workaround. So first thing, let me open up this data in StatCrunch. Okay. All right, here's the data. Now, again, usually when you want to do graphing like we want, the categories should be in a column. So I have under 6, 6 to 9. These are ages, I think. And I really want these ages to be in a column, not in rows. So again, I want to do a transpose. So I'm going to highlight this data with my mouse, go to data, arrange, transpose, and click compute. Whoops, I forgot to select the columns. Well, I'm going to select all the columns. So I want to change all of the columns into rows. And so here is my transpose data. All right, so I want to work with this data right here and try to create a stacked bar chart. Now, let's experiment a little bit. So I'm going to go to graph, chart, columns. We want a column chart here. And I'm going to select the columns. Now, what I want here are the numeric values that we want to chart. And if you notice the numeric values, let's go over here a little bit more. Okay. Again, I'm going to call this age categories here, just so we can be clear. That's what this is, right? Age categories. All right. Well, the numeric columns are never, once, and more than once. So I'm going to select those. Never, once, and more than once. Okay. Now, StatCrunch needs to know where the row labels are. What that means is when you look at this table and you look at the rows, where are the labels? What column contains the labels? Well, if you notice, here are the labels under 6, under 6 to 9. Those are the labels for each row. The column name for that is called age categories. So the row labels are going to be this column called age categories. All right, I'm going to come here to plot. And I'm going to say vertical bars stacked, because that's really what I'm trying to get to. So let me click on this, and I'll click compute. Well, this is a stacked bar chart, and it's showing for the different age categories, the frequencies, right, for each one of these categories of never, once, and more than once. But this isn't exactly what I want, because if I go back to the question, these are percentages, not actual frequencies. You know, this table is giving me actual numeric values. But what I really want is percentages. For example, 35 here. 35 is what percentage, right? So really what I want is for this entry here, instead of the number 35, I really want this to be the percentage, which would be equal to 35 over 40. Right, because I could see for this column, the total is 40, 35 have never, what is this, watch the family-friendly movie, I guess. So this table is not really set up for percentages like these charts are. All right, well, here's one thing I can do. to, to help myself out. If I go back to StatCrunch, let me go back to StatCrunch. I'm going to come back here to, I can click here, Options Edit, to go back to the previous menu. All right, so I'm going to go back here to Options Edit. And instead of vertical bar stack, what I really would like is vertical bars percentages. But there is no such option. They do show stack percentages as areas. Let me see what that looks like. Maybe that can help me out here. All right, well, this is kind of a weird looking chart, but what it's trying to show you is the different columns. Let me see if I can overlay something on here to make this a little easier to see. I'm going to pick 10 to 14 as an example. What they're trying to show you here is there's a bar that comes up to this height, then another bar that comes up to this height, and then, of course, this bar comes up to 100%. So if I eyeball this here, it looks like this bar would be at maybe, I don't know, 55%, let's say here. And this bar here looks like it may be 80%. And of course, the top here is at 100%. So what I'm looking for is a match to where in the 10 to 14 category, age category, the never bar is at a height of 55%. All right, so let me check it out here. Let me come here to 10 to 14-year-old. And here is the 10 to 14. And the never category is not at 55%. It looks like here the never category is way down here, like 20%. So I think this has to be wrong. Let me come here to graph C. Well, here's the 10 to 14. This never category here looks like it's coming out to be, I don't know, maybe around 35% roughly. Well, that's wrong. It's got to be 55%. All right, let me come over to this middle graph and check it out. Here's the 10 to 14. I'm looking here at this height of this red portion right here. It does look like 55%. So that tells me, yes, this graph B must be the correct answer. So this is not exactly the stack bar chart we wanted, but I could still use this because this is a percentage chart. Notice the way this vertical axis here is percentage. So I could still use this chart to help me decide on the correct graph. Well, let me give you another option, because maybe you say, yeah, but this is not really a good representation to directly compare to the stack bar chart. So maybe there's another way we can do it. Well, let me do this. I'm going to come over here. And if I scroll up, it turns out in part A of the problem, you had to calculate these percentages yourself. So you had to calculate for under 6 what these different percentages worked out to be. So I'm going to come here and type in the percentages from this table that I just created here. I can actually get StatCrunch to do this calculation myself, but it's a little messy, so I'm just going to copy it because I had to do it for part A anyway. So let me just put here, this is going to be the percentage for never, percent for never. This is going to be the percent for once. And then this is going to be the percent for more than once. All right, I'm just going to quickly type these percentages in. Let's say I'm doing the under 6 column. So I'm working with this column right here. So it looks like it's 87.5, 0, and 12.5. All right, I'm coming here to the 6 to 9, 75, 20, and 5. And then 10 to 14, 54.9, 23.5, 21.6. Okay, and then I'm in the 15 to 21 row. I'm copying from the table here, 83.3, 8.3, 8.3. And last row is over 21, 86.4, 10.2, and 3.4. All right, so that just took me a minute to copy those numbers. Again, the reason I'm doing this is in a stacked bar chart, if you remember, we want to plot percentages. Now, let me go back to graph. I'm going to go to graph, chart, columns. All right, now I want to plot the percentages. So now I'm going to select percent for never, percent for once, percent for more than once. The categories, those row labels, are in the age categories, we call it. Now I'll click compute. Whoops, I forgot to say bar chart. Let me go back. I forgot to come here and say plot vertical bar stat. That's what we want. Select that, click compute, and here are the charts. Again, the colors don't match up, but that's okay. Again, I'm going to go to the 10 to 14 category, just do a quick comparison. Let's do that. So again, this height here was about 55%. This height here was at about, what does that look like? 75% roughly, 80% roughly. So, you know, the only chart that seems to match up is this middle chart here. Another one I could just quickly do is over 21. Well, for over 21, this blue chart for never, the height of this looks like to be, I don't know, about 85% maybe. Well, this is the only chart, the only bar here that looks like it's at about 85%. Right, this red bar right here is way, way too low. This red bar looks like it's about 50%. That doesn't make any sense. So again, it's leading me to chart. All right, so for this stacked bar graph, I had to do a little extra work. I had to enter the percentages myself. But I had to do that anyway because part A of the question wanted me to enter that into a table. All right, folks, I hope this is helpful as you're getting started here in StatCrunch. A little bit, you know, there's a little bit of a learning curve to StatCrunch, but once you get used to some of these commands, it actually is going to be a big time saver. By the way, remember, you can use Excel also. So if you prefer to use Excel for some of these charts, you can definitely do that as well. All right, hope this is helpful working in StatCrunch.